Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, celebrating filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. Today's podcast was recorded live at Culture Night at a really special event that was supported by Coimisiún Meán for the Newcastle West Film Club in Desmond Complex. In a few moments you will hear the live Q&A of the evening where I caught up with filmmaker Whitaker, who produced the documentary feature film Birdsong. This film was supported by the Coimisiún Meán Sound and Vision scheme, which actually turns 20 this year. So have a listen as their Assistant Director of Funding, Brian Fury, explains a bit about the scheme.
Back in 2003, there was a piece of legislation that created the Broadcast Fund. Out of that, Sound and Vision was created, which is the broadcast funding scheme, and also just the archiving scheme as well, which archives broadcast content. That was created at the same time.
And to dig in there, what was the need for that, or where even was that fund created from?
I think way back when they were developing the legislation, the minister at the time would have seen that there was a requirement to allocate money from the TV licence fee to other operators, not just RTE at the time. There would have been a move by independent producers and also programme makers for radio that a scheme and a fund be created to allow them make content as well as RTE.
The first couple of years, what were the types of projects that were invested in with the scheme?
Well, it took a while for the scheme to get actually off the ground. It had to go through European state aid rules and approval and all that kind of stuff. So when the scheme actually launched in 2005, there was a lot of money built up. And thankfully what that meant was that the scheme in its first couple of rounds could support a huge amount of projects such as film, TV and radio. Out of the first kind of rounds, there was the ever great films like Garage, Kings.
Which screened here at this lovely club.
Yeah, in Newcastle West. Garage, Kings, Creagh came out of that. 32A came out of it. And then there was a number of TV dramas. What was good about the scheme was for TV drama especially, it gave another outlet for directors, producers and writers to actually create stuff that wouldn't have been seen before. So especially on TG Cahar, the likes of The Running Mate, Rossi Nagalieva, especially stuff Creagh is very important for the scheme. 25% of the fund and a minimum of 25% of the funding from the scheme needs to go to Irish language content or bilingual content. So again, that was a new thing for independent producers, writers, directors, producers to get together and actually come together and create really new, not seen before content. And that's what Sound and Vision does. It gives a leg up to the production sector, to the writers, to the crafts and all the members of the guilds there to come together and create something really great for the audience.
And how did it evolve over the years? So if you look at the next couple of years, the next type of films, bearing in mind this is a stage where what we now know as the screen industries is very different now than even it was 2008.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've seen having worked on the scheme now over the last more than a couple of years is the reliance of the screen industry on co-productions and multi-finance setups. So again, Sound and Vision is a great way that a producer in Ireland can actually tap into finance, retain some of their own IP, add a creative uplift to the project, get that extra talent they need, have that extra time for editing they need, go out on that location shoot that they wouldn't have been able to do unless they had maybe Sound and Vision funding. So it's a really important scheme for that. And I think what producers have been able to do is by even having Sound and Vision on board, it opens up doors to other financiers, both national and international, that they can actually tap into. So a lot of producers would say to us that having the allocation of funding from Sound and Vision is a really good thing to have in your finance plan when you're presenting at festivals or presenting to other financiers.
And that's the nature of the funding, that it is a grant and not a loan.
Yeah.
That's more attractive.
Yeah. So if a project that we fund becomes wildly successful, there is a recruitment clause built into our contract up to the value of the grant. But again, the Sound and Vision scheme is particularly focused at stuff that is difficult to make, might otherwise not be made, and it has a strong kind of Irish cultural value and it's really for the TV license paying audience at home to watch and hear the projects that they want.
And what were some sort of the successes that you have really enjoyed watching over the years through the scheme?
Well, the project we're screening tonight here at the Desmond Complex in Newcastle West, with the great help of the Newcastle West Film Club, Birdsong. That's one of the standout documentaries I think that the scheme has funded. There are many examples. Documentary for me is a really powerful way of telling stories, and certainly Birdsong, the main protagonist Seán Ronayne, and how Ross Whitaker made the film and Kathleen directed it, really brought kind of a really niche story into our screens. And there's both the climate point of view, but then there's also nature, and then there's also neurodiversity and the Ireland we live in today and the effect that we're having on climate and what that is doing to nature and stuff like that. So that's what all Sound and Vision is about. It's all about Irish culture, heritage and experience. It's broad, but that means that producers can actually engage with it and create really important content that can be enjoyed by audiences.
This was an environmental message. How important, or how do you guys sort of decide on the issues that exist and then pick the projects?
Well, Sound and Vision is designed to react to both what the audience wants, but also what the market's doing. Climate change and climate action was something that is very important both at a government level, but also to broadcasters and people at home. The Climate Action Plan that was agreed by the government, I think back in 2021, set out kind of ways to address that. One of them was to raise awareness and kind of to change people's way of interacting with climate as a subject matter. So Sound and Vision was given extra money to run a special round focused on projects that would engage the audience in matters to do with climate change and climate action. But the beauty of Sound and Vision as well is that, we didn't say it had to look like this or sound like that. What it meant was that broadcasters and producers and creatives could get together and actually come up with kind of innovative ways of looking at the subject matter. This time it was climate change and climate action. And again, if you look at Birdsong, it's such a really great way of getting that story across to the audience. Birdsong, by its name, there's not a mention of climate action or climate change or anything, but when you watch it and see what it's actually telling the story of and what Seán's experiencing going around Ireland, it's a really great way of getting that message across to an audience that might not otherwise watch it.
Brilliant. So hopefully they'll enjoy it tonight and we'll have a nice chat after.
Thank you very much.
So just before this screening was about to commence, I actually caught up with Newcastle West Film Club founding member Mary Carroll about the important role that they play in the community.
Thanks so much for having us. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the club. Thank you for the interest. It's always good to tell people about the club and raise our profile. Newcastle West Film Club is on the go since 2008. It was the brainchild of a local community development organisation, West Limerick Resources, and a sister company, West Limerick CDLP. And they obviously were looking at the needs of the community, and they were identifying that there was a lot of new communities. And if you were new to the community and you didn't play GAA and you didn't go to the pub, there weren't really many opportunities to meet and socialise with people. So they got grant funding, and then they put a call out for volunteers who might set up a club. So a group of volunteers came together organically, I suppose, with the support then of workers from West Limerick Resources and the CDLP, and they guided us through the process of setting up a club, which none of us had done before. So things like doing a constitution and, just even clarifying what our purpose was, what we wanted to be, what we wanted the club to look like. So that took a good few months of work, a lot of meetings, but we got there. And then, so that was 2008, and September 2008, then we had our first screening. So that was very special.
And it's sort of an interesting time in the world as well for people to be gathered together. It was just, like 2008 is very distinct in terms of what's happening in Ireland.
Yes, yeah. It was a very changing time. I suppose we didn't know what we were facing into economically, really, at that time. It was beginning to bite. And we also had, like say, a lot of new communities, and we were all adapting as you went along. So it was, I think there was an openness. People wanted distraction maybe and wanted something positive, to engage in. There's a lot of excitement for the club. We didn't know where it would land. And on our first night, we had over 60 people came to the film. So we were delighted.
And so I was wondering if you could just tell me what this means to the community and why it's so important.
I suppose we have our own perspective on what it's like as a committee. And, it's one of those things, maybe it's hard when you're on the inside looking out and, trying to look at the perceived value. But we do get very positive feedback from people who attend, who say we're so lucky, to have this in the community, that it's such a lovely space. People really enjoy coming along and having somewhere to go to. We've always, for example, tried to keep our price affordable. We put up our price for the first time a couple of years ago. We went up to €8 from €7. If you want to get a glass of wine, it's €3. We've always tried to keep it sort of in around the €10 mark, so that it's an affordable night for people. And I think they appreciate that. And when they come, we spoil them, sort of we'll have goodies and we'll have a chat, and, we make everybody welcome. So we get a lot of feedback from people then about what that means to them to have that space to come to. And I suppose even after COVID, you could see people's delight at being able to come back to a community venue like this, where they're able to meet people again and have the chat. And so I think it offers something in line with the remit when it was set up. Like I say, if you're not into going to the GAA and maybe not into going to the pub, it does give an alternative outlet. It also does we do show good films, and we do get feedback on the films. People would say, I would never have gone to see that. I would never have thought to watch that, and they're usually glad that they have seen it, and they valued that piece as well, about the introduction to film.
And the importance of storytelling, creativity.
Yes, yeah. And especially, it opens up new places. It can open up, like one, say for example, a film that people really talked about was Luan, the Yak in the Classroom. Okay, and that's set in Bhutan. And that was just such a simple film, but it was so beautiful, and it was there was lessons that people nearly identified with in Ireland. People do try and, they transpose messages around community, or, they sort of look at, well, actually that could be here in some ways, or that, sort of the universal themes of things. So there's the bit about, like I said, storytelling, and there's a bit about understanding other cultures as well, that we do very indirectly. We're always excited if we get to show a film from a country that we haven't shown. So last season we showed the Iranian film My Favorite Cake, and again that was really, people were very interested in that. It was our first time showing an Iranian film, and there was the backstory then that people were interested in terms of what it was like for that filmmaker or that director, sort of trying to get the film out of Iran. The idea of what lives are like for women, and you get all those ways of thinking about it, so people have, they get to see something really different, but in a very community setting. And I mean, I suppose I'm going off topic slightly here, but there is definitely something about watching films in a group. There's a different energy with it, and even myself, I've sometimes watched films in with the group that I've watched myself on my own, and to see what people are taking from it, the bits that people find funny or sad, or I would think are inappropriately funny, as in, like, I don't understand why they're maybe laughing. I think, God, I thought it was a very sad moment or something, and you can see the energy of it rippling through the group, and they get something from sharing that experience, I think, as a community. And it's, yeah, so I do think it offers something very important to a community, to have a balance of mediums, of ways of expression and ways of engaging with the outside world, but also looking at what's universal to the community as well. And film is a very good way of doing that.
Brilliant. So tell me about the films that you screen.
We show a mix. We've been on our own journey, I think, of learning about films. I suppose there's a luxury that comes with if you're doing a lot of films. And when we started out, we were doing 12 films before Christmas, 12 after. So you had the luxury to experiment maybe a little bit more, and you knew if you had a sort of a bit of a dud one week, the following week you could make up for it, and people would sort of maybe they'd keep engaged with you. Whereas over time we've had to adapt our model of screening, and we moved to fortnightly, and then we've moved to once a month. And I suppose just something about that supply and demand, sort of that if we maybe show less, people might take us less for granted and actually make more of an effort to come when film was on, whereas it wasn't working that way. So now we have to be more careful, I suppose, really extra conscious that we want to show, if you've only 3 films in a season or 4 films in a season, each one really has to count. You're trying to get the balance then over the 3 or 4 films in terms of lightness or topic or language. We'll usually try and show 1 English language film. Sometimes that'll change. This season we happen to have 2 and a French film, and also tonight's film Birdsong is a 4th film sort of in it. But we will try, and sometimes that it's going to need a bit more of the humour. Sometimes we'll feel very strongly about a film that might be heavier, might have more serious content or hard hitting. But we've developed that rapport with the audience where we can say, we're showing this because we believe it's one you will be glad you've seen. And, and we can stand over that. So we try not to be in a comfort zone of nice French comedy rom-com sort of thing, which sometimes we need that in the balance of the season, but other times we know that it's important maybe to show a film that's a bit grittier, and the audience do accept that there'd be times where, like, I stand at the door when people are leaving, and you get such comments. Sometimes people are very unified in what they say, and then other times I get absolutely completely opposite views, from 2 people walking out the door at the same time. I absolutely love that film or absolutely hate that film, but they'll always have a reason why. And but they'll also accept that was just a film that didn't suit them, and that other people might have enjoyed it, and they're able to tell the difference, between. Yeah.
And how many people do you serve? You're sort of, not everyone comes every week, but in terms of, your general audience / members / attendees.
Yeah. So we have a mixture. I suppose we have an age profile that goes from, we're over 18s, first of all. So we'd have people probably in their 20s, right up to, at one point we had a lady in her 90s who used to come to every film. She's stopped now, but we've, older ladies who come. There's a group of them from the local women's shed. And we've people who come as groups of friends, people who come as couples, people who come on their own, families. So, we've got a right mix. Some nights we might have 25 people, some nights we could have 40. Then we'll have events, like bigger events, where we'll take part, for example, in the Skellig Michael Festival. It's a local literary and arts festival. And that, I suppose, it has a wider reach in terms of, sort of people who attend the festival. And we'll try and show something that's linked to maybe Irish culture. So our last couple of films, for example, last year we showed That They May Face the Rising Sun. The year before that we showed on Culminating. We had 100 people for both of those films. We were trying to pull chairs out of the attic there, like trying to seat people, but we had huge demand. And actually within Culminating we ended up doing a second screening with it like 50 people who came another time to see it because it was so popular.
Wow.
We were going to be showing The Blue Road in a couple of weeks' time, and we're hoping we'll get a similar turnout. But we know that wouldn't be a typical night for us. That's an event night. That's part of something else.
Tell me about tonight. How does this come about?
So we were approached by Coimisiún and Meán, and they were looking to host an event. They were aware, I understand, that films were being shown in Desmond Complex, and I suppose through Desmond Complex they made the link with us. So it's It's like a triangle of arrangement, I suppose, between Coimisiún, Meán, Desmond Complex and ourselves. So they basically, it was, we want to show this film Birdsong, which obviously is a beautiful film, or a fabulous documentary, and it touches on so much, really. But then, like, they were absolutely throwing in a package of, like, we do catering and, sort of like, yeah, that's such a treat for our members. So it's nice. It's a strange one for us because there's a lot of it has been organised beyond. We're so used to organising and, doing all the arrangements. So it's been a little bit funny stepping back and having somebody else do that. And just part of me sort of going, okay, well, maybe it's nice for us to have, this provided for us as well, because we're used to taking all the responsibility for that. It's always nice to be spoiled. Absolutely. And it's fabulous to be able to offer our audience, to say, look, there's this free film and you're going to have catering, there's going to be music. It's like a proper setup, obviously, with sound and everything. Like, we obviously have sound from Film Club, but, in terms of, they're used to me speaking, sort of at the top of the room in a very informal way. This is obviously a more formal experience. I think it feels like more of an occasion, an event for our members. And I think it's a lovely thing to be able to offer them. So we're delighted that we were approached and, hopefully it'll be a successful event all around. I think it will be. Our film members, we don't look at the filmmaking side of things. Sometimes we will get people who approach us and ask us about Film Club, and they're like, is this a club where you talk about filmmaking? And they think it's more that we're going to sit down and talk about, and I have to explain, no, we're actually it's about watching films that you might not see in the cinema. And there's sometimes a disappointment, whereas I think this tonight, the fact that they're going to be able to have hear from a filmmaker about the process of making that film, and to hear it directly after seeing the film, that documentary, I think it's going to be a great experience for the audience. It's one that they haven't had yet, so it could be something we could look at doing a little bit more as well. Hopefully in the future it might inspire us to try and broaden out the experience rather than it being just about watching the film.
And then we watched the film Birdsong. So just to remind you about the film, have a listen to the trailer here, and it's actually available to watch on the RT player as well.
Our ancestors would have listened to birdsong and they would have used it to interpret the world around them. There's quite a few vocalizations, really. It's like another language.
Did you hear that? It's brambling. It's like a drug to me. Really excited. It's just brilliant.
It's just nice to listen into another world, somewhere we're not used to hearing. That way. Look.
Oh, beautiful!
It's next to the wall. Look.
.63% of our birds are at risk of extinction, so they're either red or amber listed.
How many do you reckon are left? But last year, it was just this one confirmed pair in the whole country.
The sonic loss. It's a representation of the physical loss. The more people that you reach out to, the more chance we have of making a difference.
What he's doing is going to be a great record to have.
I think that people connect with music and sound. It's another way to make people care about things that we're potentially losing.
After the screening, I sat down with Ross and the club members to chat about his experience working with Kathleen and on Birdsong.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Getting a project like this across the line is such a huge amount of work. We're watching it and it's a certain amount of minutes and really enjoyable to sit through, but it's such a labour. So I was wondering if you could talk me through the process as a producer and about what it was like applying to the funding, getting the film across the line, all the work that went into it before you even picked up a camera.
Well, the background was that Kathleen, who directed the film, and we had a small team that worked very closely together in making it. She had been a video journalist in the Irish Times for 10 years. And she won Video Journalist of the Year and twice. But she had never made anything really longer than 5 or 6 minutes. And she's a friend of a friend, and we were introduced. And she said, I'd really like to start making longer documentaries, longer films. And I looked at some of her work and some of the stuff she wanted to do, and I could see really quickly that I thought she was really talented. And I thought that she might actually be like a special talent. So I then asked her what ideas she had, and she said, I don't really have any ideas at the moment. And then very quickly after that, she said, well, I do have this one idea, which is this story that you just watched, and which we all loved and still love, and actually felt quite emotional watching the end of it, seen it 1,000 times. But I think I said in advance, we were very lucky. We were sort of starting to write up the idea and write up the kind of treatments for the idea and that kind of thing that we do. And then a round of funding was announced for environmental work, and we applied for it, and we got it, and off we went. So sometimes it takes years to finance a documentary, actually, but with this one, it was one of those things where it all fell into place quite quickly. And then I think it took us about 6 months to make the documentary then overall, and there it is. Yeah, it's this last year that you finish it.
So you were saying 4 or 5 months shooting, and then what, 1 month editing?
Well, there would have been some overlap, I suppose. So yeah, probably 4 or 5 months, and then some overlap with the edit. But yeah, they wanted to film through the summer, so it would have been summer 2 years ago that it was filmed. Things like filming on Skellig Michael, you can't really do in the winter. And also, that's when the birds are here in Ireland. It's one thing about doing a documentary like this is you really are in thrall to nature, because the birds are where they are, when they are where there, and then they are somewhere else. And what's interesting about it is I learned quite a lot making it. And one of the things that kind of amazed me was, I thought, well, we're losing birds, but not to in any way take anything away from that, but like, do those birds also exist elsewhere? What's the kind of crossover in thinking between that? Like, if a bird species in Ireland ceases to exist, is the song of that bird available somewhere else? And as I understand it from what Seán has said to me, that there are distinctive songs. A particular species of bird in Ireland will have a distinctive song. So when we lose a song, we lose it forever. And that, knowing that gave us, I suppose, real incentive and desire to capture as much as we could, and for Seán to capture as much as we could in that time, and to tell people this story.
And I will say the response since it first screened at the Dublin International Film Festival has been huge. Filming Seán. And do you think part of when you were shooting this that you had an inkling of how special it would be?
We had no idea. Like, we thought, I don't. It's hard to also put these things in context of trying to remember how you felt rather than thinking about it in retrospect. But I think that we thought that we were making something quite small and niche. And I remember thinking, like, I hope RTE will just give this a decent slot, because when working out your films, the slot that it goes out on is so important. If you go on TV at 8 o'clock on a Sunday or 9:30 on a Monday, there is a certain number of people that are probably already watching and may continue to watch. If you screen at 10:30 on Thursday night, well, I'm in bed. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but that you lose the opportunity. And I was worried that they wouldn't give it a decent slot because it would be considered quite niche. But from the first screening, and then we did some more screenings, and then media started to become interested in it, we realized that there was a momentum building, and I think RTE realized that. And then I think we were on at Sunday at 8 o'clock. and at the end up getting like huge ratings for the documentary, and on the player as well, which continues to be watched on the player. Go on.
And one of the things that are so beautifully done in this documentary is how it handles neurodiversity. And is that something you were conscious of going into it?
When we started, we're still trying to fully understand, I think, that part of Seán's story, because his diagnosis is actually relatively recent. It's only in the last few years. And I think you spend a lot of time with Seán, you realize that he's a unique character, and then you're trying to start understanding what it is about him that is unique. And obviously his neurodiversity has brought his particular case almost some like superpowers, and a super passion that is that he's so excited about something, and it's so contagious, so there's some phenomenal elements of neurodiversity. It's also challenging for him at times, and I think he's, in the last few years, he's used to. So for us, I remember us having conversations when we were making it about how much of this is appropriate to include it, as it's, again, relatively new to Seán in some ways. And I think Kathleen, who's the creative lead, really, we all felt that it was important for it to be part of the story in a really positive way. And so that's what we tried to do, without making Seán be completely defined by it.
It's beautiful. So we actually are running out of time. Does anyone have any questions about the film?
Well, I think it's exquisite. I'm so glad about seeing it though on the big screen rather than at home, because I've only a teeny TV, and I just think the empathy between whoever was behind the camera and the directing, it was just so spot on. It's poetic, and there was such joy. You could see the joy in Seán's face when he recognized something, when he got something that was new. I know, like, it was like pure magic to watch. But what amazed me as well, though, is that how much more that there is. Because I reckon there's weeks of stuff that have been cut out to make 1 hour. And it's really sad that so many birds are being lost. But I'd say send that man out everywhere, into every town and village in Ireland. And he found the name. He's going to save the birds.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Seán, since making this film, Seán has quit his job and now spends a lot of time going, like, giving talks, and everywhere he goes, they're sold out, so he is spreading word. And like, when you make something like this, you want it to have a real world application, and you're trying to measure that. And we actually did at screenings questionnaires with people, and we followed up with people, and we did quite a little research project around it, and we got huge numbers of people saying that it actually changed the way they think about these things. And then that's kind of qualitative data in terms of, like, how much can you trust it, or I suppose there's academic limitations on it to a degree. But one thing is that, like, Birdwatch Ireland's membership has gone through the roof since the film has been out. So, like, that's a real quantitative and positive reflection on it. And we do have more footage. There's actually a longer version of the film somewhere. But
hello.
Hi.
I wanted to ask then if there's any repercussions, but like about the pockets, they were mentioning pockets of hope and stuff. Like, so I'm not Irish. I came here like 3 years ago or something, and when I came, it was really that impressive. The thing he was mentioning about, like, there's lots of green, but then I started to realize, okay, some of these land is just like not used like at all, or not used properly, or for the cows, just for grazing and stuff. And so real repercussions if there's any farmers or if people like are involved in like searching for active solutions for what's happening.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, people are aware that I think Ireland is bottom of the biodiversity charts in Europe. We're the worst at biodiversity, which is kind of mind-blowing when you grow up in a country where you feel like it's a green land and and, you feel positively about it. I do think that people are, I can't give you, again, like a quantitative response in terms of, I can't say, this is happening, that's happening, but there are a lot of people waking up to this fact, and we're hearing more about it. But there's also, farming is necessary and a big part of communities, but I think we need there to be better interaction with farmers to understand some of the impacts of their work without limiting what they have to do, obviously. So, and that's one element of it. There's so many different parts of it, but I do think people are waking up to it. Yeah, I don't have a hugely positive response though, but hopefully this is helping.
And Ross, you had a huge and varied back catalogue. How do you decide in a project? I mean, you had the likes of Matt Pollock, and you had Barney Cully, and you had Birdsong, and then you have Suffering. How do you decide in a project? And do you ever look at project and turn it down because you think it's not commercially viable?
Yeah, well, it's funny that this film club is going for 17 years, because my first film also first screened 17 years ago this month. So there you go. Thinking back. Yeah, sorry. I think it's just experience over time, but you know that there's a jigsaw puzzle of something you really feel passionately about, you want to do, and a story that feels like it has what it takes to last for an hour or for 90 minutes. And then in your head somewhere you have this instinctive knowledge of what works within the funding landscape. And so that equation is happening in your head all the time, and sometimes you dismiss things that you think are interesting very quickly because you realize there's no path to funding this. And like I'm sure most people in the room, I have a mortgage and I have small children and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's hard to make a living at what we do, so you become more and more, I suppose, focused on ensuring that you get to make projects that you like, but also that you're able to get paid when you're making them. So, yeah, it's just experience,
This is our very last one, and we've already run out of time. Why do you make films then?
I don't know anymore. I just started, and then it kept happening. Look, I have to say, and I did a bit of a poor mouth in the last question in terms of it isn't an easy thing to make a living, but it is an amazing job. For us, it's what a privilege to go out and spend 20 days going around filming Seán Ronayne. And when you're doing this job, it's a really weird, I often find it really weird, I'm making a big camogie documentary at the moment, and earlier on I was ringing the Galway captain to set up an interview with her, and I'll meet her next Tuesday, and she'll allow me to ask her pretty much anything about her life, and her background and why she's into camogie and the experience they had this year winning Go Ireland. Because I'm someone making a documentary. Someone just walked up to her in the street and started asking her all these questions. She'd say, "Please go away," So, and I've had that experience with, the Irish team that played Battalion 90 with Katie Taylor, Shane Lowry, Rachel Blackmore, myriad people over the years. And I just, that never becomes normal to me. It always feels special to have that experience. And I suppose, he kind of, it's hard, it would be hard to stop doing that.
And just so that everyone can get to see it. It's such a joy as an audience to watch a piece of your work. Thank you.
And then finally, I had a chat with the enthusiastic attendees of the film club themselves. What did you enjoy about the film?
I just loved the whole film, but it brought back memories from childhood as a child here in Newcastle West, when the cuckoo was a very common bird, and the corncrake, and we don't hear them anymore. So the whole film was just beautiful. I loved it. Really fascinating. Thank you.
The actual starling formations it must be magnificent to actually be underneath it.
Yeah.
I mean, the formations they make, they look like monsters, and they look like all the different formations. It's out of this world, really. It's fantastic.
And did you like the film?
So it was lovely. But I was just saying to my friend up there that it's fascinating when I see all these birds flying around in those amazing, the way they do. They never crash into each other.
No.
How did they avoid each other?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, there's many aspects to the film. There's all the different bird songs, and the majority of people don't know the different bird songs, and the fact that they have different kinds of songs. Some are for attracting a female, some are for defending territory, and some are for warning others that there's danger around. But for me, the most poignant section of the film is when Seán records the last pair of ringoozles in Ireland, and they're up in Donegal, and they're like a blackbird that likes mountain areas, and their habitat has been destroyed mainly from overgrazing, mainly sheep. The sheep eat the plants. And they not like cattle. When cattle and horses eat it, it's not as down to the soil as sheep are. And if there's no wildflowers, there's no insects, and if there's no insects, there's no food for the ringoozle, and that's their main reason why they've declined. But the thing that struck me was that the majority of people in Ireland would never have heard of a ringoozle, yet it's going to become extinct, and it is part of our heritage. And I think that's sad that a bird is going to be, in my lifetime, in our generation, is going to become extinct in Ireland. Similar to another bird called a corn bunting many years ago, and for many counties in County Limerick, the corncrake has become extinct. So there are many. There's a few species that have become extinct because of a habitat change, but it's a sad part of the film.
So thanks so much for listening. Make sure to rate and subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts, or you can subscribe to our newsletter at filmireland.ie.